I woke to a sharp beeping, the kind that feels like it's pressing against your skull. The hospital room was cold, antiseptic, and quiet except for the rhythmic hiss of the ventilator. My hand flinched toward the phone on the nightstand, which vibrated insistently. Police, over 3 different cities. My pulse spiked, though I barely had the strength to sit upright. I didn't understand. Not then, not for a long stretch afterward. The accusations were concrete on paper: stalking, harassment, obsession, months of supposedly relentless pursuit. The only problem, was that I'd been here. Confined. Monitors, IV lines, nurses, clipped instructions. The past weeks were a haze of painkillers, tests, and hospital meals I couldn't eat. I had been alive, but I had not been present in the world outside these walls. The first officer arrived mid-morning. She was brisk, professional, and thorough. She laid the documents on the bedside table, her gaze calm but penetrating. "We have multiple reports against you," she said. "We need your statement." I stared at the papers, my throat tight. I wanted to laugh, I wanted to cry, I wanted to tell her I had been tethered to a hospital bed while my supposed crimes unfurled across 3 cities. But even that felt absurd. Who would believe it? The officer didn't raise an eyebrow. She simply asked for details, dates, locations, witnesses. And so I began, carefully, slowly. The memory of each hospital procedure, the names of each nurse, the timestamps of each medication, the photographs from scans, they became my armor. My words were precise, restrained, but they carried the weight of truth. Outside, the world had shifted in my absence. Messages from friends and colleagues trickled in, polite but tentative. Some avoided me entirely. Trust had been quietly eroded while I lay helpless, and the betrayal stung deeper than any physical pain I'd endured. The person who had claimed I haunted her life, my wife, had done this, had set this in motion. I tried to reconstruct the timeline, to map her movements, her claims. Each detail that contradicted my reality became a strange mix of horror and incredulity. Memory alone wasn't enough. I relied on hospital logs, photographs, even the time-stamped medical alerts. Each piece of evidence added weight to my side, a counterpoint to the chaos she'd created. The days stretched on. Interviews with officers and lawyers became a rhythm of tension and release. I learned to speak with calm precision, to answer questions without anger, without pleading. Silence became a tool. Hesitation, when paired with certainty in my documentation, allowed authority to do its work. Slowly, control began to shift, not with a dramatic outburst, but in the quiet way facts assert themselves. The most jarring moment was the first in-person interaction with her since the accusations began. She arrived at the precinct, distant and composed. I looked at her, and there was no recognition in her eyes, only the certainty of her narrative. I had no words that could reach her, and I understood then that some fractures could not be mended by explanation alone. Instead, the shift happened in the paperwork, in the verification of hospital stays and hospital staff testimony. The officer's demeanor changed subtly, less questioning, more acknowledgement. They had no choice but to reconcile her claims with the undeniable truth of my hospitalization. The power dynamics, which had seemed so rigidly against me, began to tilt in the quietest possible way. Authority quietly aligned with reality. Even then, the sense of betrayal lingered. I felt the empty spaces where trust had been. I felt the tension in my own voice when speaking to friends. Even those who knew me best seemed to carry a shadow of doubt, the residue of what someone else had claimed. Emotional consequences had no immediate remedy. They lingered like bruises, invisible but persistent. I found myself reflecting more than speaking. Memory and observation became tools for understanding, not just defending. How did someone I trusted enough to share life with orchestrate such a complex web? How could the law remain impartial yet so reliant on human testimony, which is always vulnerable to manipulation? The questions were quiet, internal, and I allowed them to unfold without seeking immediate answers. Finally, the resolution came not with drama, but with calm documentation. The charges were dropped. The officer explained the closure with professional detachment. My alibi had been airtight, undeniable. The truth, in its quiet clarity, had reasserted itself. But even as relief washed through me, I knew that nothing was entirely restored. The betrayal had left marks, relationships were altered. Trust would take years, if ever, to rebuild. I left the precinct without celebration. The city felt the same, but I felt altered. Quietly empowered, yes, but also wary, reflective, permanently changed. Some victories are internal, some remain painfully unshared. Authority had vindicated me, but it could not erase the emotional consequences, the lingering weight of betrayal. Back in my apartment, the silence was almost comforting. I moved through it with care, noticing details I had ignored before, attuning to my own rhythm, my own reality. I had survived the ordeal without collapsing, without resorting to aggression or vengeance. There was dignity in that restraint, and I clung to it. I still thought of her, of the impossibility of understanding her motives fully. I still remembered the police calls, the strange disbelief, the hospital monitors beeping as if to mark my absence from the world. I carried these memories as evidence of resilience, as markers of personal growth. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no satisfying confrontation. Just life, unfolding in measured steps, guided by quiet truths rather than shouted victories. Somewhere in that quiet, I understood something fundamental. Power can be reclaimed not through spectacle, but through patience, precision, and an unwavering connection to reality. Even when betrayed by someone closest, one can emerge intact, quietly stronger, tempered by the ordeal yet aware of its lingering shadows. And so, the story ended not with celebration or catharsis, but with a calm return to oneself. Authority had corrected the record. The external threat dissipated. The internal scars remained, but they were no longer wounds, they were reminders, markers of endurance and quiet resilience.